Welcome to our deep dive into product market fit. You sent over this PMF primer presentation from November 2024, which tells me you're really digging into the world of startups. So today, we're going to unpack that journey from a founder's perspective, going from an idea to a product that people actually can't live without.
That's the dream, right? And this presentation jumps right in with a quote from Sahil Lavingia. He says, "A startup with product market fit wants 1,000 things. A startup without it only wants one."
Okay, so what makes this such a powerful statement for someone like you who's exploring the world of startups? It seems pretty straightforward, but I feel like there's a deeper meaning there.
It's all about focus. Imagine you're a founder pre-seed, maybe even pre-revenue. You're laser focused on just surviving, proving that your idea has legs, that one thing you want, product market fit. Because without it, you can't get funding, you can't build a team, you can't really do anything but search for that fit. But once you find it, suddenly a whole world of possibilities opens up, like securing that Series A funding.
Because at that stage, investors aren't just betting on a cool idea. They're looking for proof that you've tapped into a real market need, right? But one thing that always trips me up is that there doesn't seem to be one clear definition of PMF. Slide 7 of this presentation really drives that point home.
It's true. It's almost like everyone's got their own pet definition. Some are super qualitative, like being drowned in demand. Others get hyper-specific with growth metrics, like hitting 20% month-on-month growth for a whole year. It can be pretty overwhelming when you're first starting out.
So how is someone supposed to make sense of all these different perspectives? It feels like you could drive yourself crazy trying to hit every single metric or match every single description.
That's where things get interesting. Instead of looking for one perfect answer, flip the script. Ask yourself, what does product market fit look and feel like for my specific product in my target market? Because achieving PMF for a B2B SaaS platform is going to be totally different from, say, a consumer mobile app.
That takes the pressure off, right? Instead of chasing some abstract ideal, you're focused on what truly matters for your business. And I like how this presentation breaks down the journey to PMF into two clear steps. Slide 8 calls them product to problem fit, or PPF, and motion to market fit, or MMF. And there's even a graph that shows this whole process visually.
That drunken walk graph is a great way to visualize it. At first, you're kind of stumbling around, figuring things out, experimenting. There's a lot of trial and error in those early stages as you iterate towards PPF. But then, once you nail that fit between your product and a real problem, you can shift gears and focus on MMF, finding that scalable and repeatable way to reach your customers. And that's where you hit that hockey stick growth curve.
Okay, I'm loving the visuals here. Slide 9 gives us a nice clean formula. PMF, PPF plus MMF. It makes it feel less mysterious, more like something you can systematically work towards. So let's break down each side of the equation. What are the core components of PPF, and what are some concrete steps someone can take to achieve it?
PPF is all about making sure your product truly solves a problem or creates a delightful experience for your users. You're essentially validating your core hypothesis that this problem is worth solving and that your solution is the right one.
So you're not just building something because you think it's cool. You're building it because there's a real need out there and people are willing to pay for a solution.
Right, exactly. It's about understanding your customers so deeply that you can anticipate their needs and create a product that feels tailor-made for them. And it starts with building something quickly, getting it into the hands of users, and being open to feedback.
So we're talking minimum viable product or MVP territory here.
Yeah.
Get something out there, learn from it, and iterate quickly.
Exactly. You don't need a perfect feature-rich product at this stage. In fact, trying to build the perfect product before validating your core assumptions can be a huge mistake.
Okay, so you've built your MVP, you're getting feedback, but how do you know when you've actually achieved PPF? Is there a light bulb moment, or are there specific signs you should be looking for?
One of the most popular methods is the Sean Ellis test, which the presentation highlights on slide 11. It's all about asking your users a simple but powerful question. How would you feel if you could no longer use your product?
Ah, yes, the very disappointed test. If 40% or more of your users say they'd be very disappointed if your product disappeared, that's a good sign you've achieved PPF. But what's so special about that 40% number? Why not 30% or 50%?
That 40% threshold is interesting, isn't it? It's not about finding a majority. It's about finding a significant enough group of users who are so reliant on your product that they would feel a real sense of loss without it. It indicates you've moved beyond just being a nice to have to becoming an integral part of their workflow or their lives.
Okay, so that deep level of emotional connection is what separates a product that's simply useful from a product that's truly indispensable. And that's a powerful signal of PPF. But are there other ways to gauge whether you're on the right track besides the Sean Ellis test?
Absolutely. The PMF primer breaks them down for B2B and B2C contexts. For B2C, high engagement and rapid organic growth are strong indicators. Are people actively using your product, sharing it with friends, leaving positive reviews? Those are all good signs. For B2B, pay close attention to your sales cycle.
So if deals are closing quickly, that means your product is resonating and solving a pressing need,
Right.
especially for smaller businesses where the sales process tends to be faster.
Exactly. Think about it. If a small business with limited resources and a lean decision-making process is willing to move quickly to adopt your product, it means you're addressing a real pain point and providing clear value.
All right, so we've nailed down PPF. We've got a product that's solving a real problem for the right people. Now it's time to scale things up. Slide 12 introduces the concept of motion to market fit, or MMF. But before we dive into the details, I'm curious, what does achieving MMF actually feel like for a founder?
There's this shift, almost like a sigh of relief. You've been grinding away, proving your concept, iterating on the product, and now there's this sense of, okay, we've got something people love, let's get it out to the world. It becomes less about survival and more about growth, which brings its own set of challenges, of course.
Right, because now you need to figure out how to reach those ideal customers in a way that's not just effective, but also scalable and repeatable. Slide 12 emphasizes having a playbook for customer acquisition that hits on three key elements: scalability, repeatability, and unit positivity. But before we unpack each of those, I think it would be helpful to understand what they mean in practice. Can you give us a real-world example of a company that's really nailed MMF?
One company that comes to mind is Slack. They've built an incredibly scalable platform, allowing millions of users to communicate and collaborate seamlessly. Their freemium model drives organic growth, and their focus on user experience has led to incredibly high retention rates.
So they figured out how to acquire customers efficiently, keep them engaged, and do it all in a way that's profitable.
That's impressive. All right, now let's break down those three elements you mentioned. First up, scalability. What does that actually look like in the context of building a successful business?
Scalability means that your go-to-market motion isn't limited by your own resources or by the size of your team. It has to be able to handle massive growth without breaking down. Your acquisition channels, your messaging, your sales process, even your customer support, all of these need to be designed with scale in mind.
So no relying on strategies that might work for a handful of early adopters, but won't hold up when you have thousands or even millions of customers, right?
Exactly. Think about it. If your customer acquisition strategy involves manually reaching out to each individual prospect, that might work initially. But as your business grows, that approach becomes completely unsustainable. You need systems and processes that can automate and streamline those efforts.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've covered scalability. What about repeatability? What's the key takeaway there? Repeatability is all about having a system that consistently generates predictable outcomes. It's about removing the randomness and luck from the equation and building a machine that consistently acquires, converts, and retains customers.
And this is especially important for businesses that rely on recurring revenue, right? Like SaaS companies or subscription services.
Absolutely. Unless you're selling a one-time purchase product like a piece of furniture or a car, repeat business is crucial. If you can't keep customers coming back for more, you're constantly battling churn, which can be incredibly draining on resources and morale.
And this ties back to the concept of unit economics, which the presentation mentions several times but doesn't really define clearly. Can you unpack that for us? What exactly are unit economics and why are they so crucial for achieving MMF?
Think of unit economics as the fundamental profitability of your business at the individual customer level. It's about understanding how much it costs to acquire a customer, SNAP, how much revenue they generate over their lifetime, LTV, and whether you're making more money from them than it costs to serve them.
So it's about making sure your business model is fundamentally sound, right? That you're not just acquiring customers at any cost, but that each customer is actually contributing to your bottom line.
Precisely. And this is where that third element, unit positivity, comes into play.
Okay, let's talk about unit positivity. The presentation mentions that it means making more money from each customer than it costs to acquire and serve them. Sounds pretty straightforward, but I have a feeling there's more to it than meets the eye.
You're absolutely right. While the concept is simple, the execution can be incredibly complex. It involves tracking all your costs, from marketing and sales to customer support and product development, and then comparing those costs to the revenue generated by each customer.
So it's about understanding the lifetime value of a customer versus the cost of acquiring and serving them.
Exactly. You need to ensure that the LTV, lifetime value, significantly outweighs the CAC, customer acquisition cost. In fact, a common benchmark is an LTV.SEC ratio of 3.1. This means that for every dollar you spend acquiring a customer, you should aim to generate at least $3 in revenue from them over their lifetime.
That's a helpful benchmark. So achieving MMF is about having a scalable system for acquiring customers, ensuring that those customers keep coming back for more, and making sure that each customer is actually profitable for your business.
You got it. It's about building a sustainable business model that can fuel long-term growth. And the PMF Primer offers an interesting perspective on how to approach this.
Let's hear it. What's their take on achieving MMF?
Slide 13 presents a rather counterintuitive sequence. It suggests iterating on your message first, then your channel, then your persona, and only then your product.
That's an interesting order. Why do you think they emphasize this specific sequence?
Think about it. Changing your product is a much heavier lift than tweaking your messaging or experimenting with different channels. So, by iterating on those elements first, you can gain valuable insights and validate key assumptions before diving into costly product development work.
That's a brilliant insight. So you're essentially minimizing risk by testing your assumptions in a more agile and cost-effective way. The presentation even provides an example of HubSpot and how they initially struggled with targeting the right market. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure, HubSpot initially focused on small businesses, but later realized that their ideal customer profile was actually larger enterprises. This required not just changes to their product, but also a complete overhaul of their messaging and their go-to-market strategy.
Couldn't they have avoided those costly product development mistakes by doing more thorough market research up front?
It's easy to say that in hindsight, but the reality is that even the most thorough market research can't always predict how a product will be received or how the market will evolve. Sometimes you need to get your product out there, gather real-world data, and be willing to adapt based on what you learn.
This is a valuable lesson for any founder. So we've talked about working towards MMF, but how do you know when you've actually achieved it? What are some of the signs that you found that elusive motion to market fit?
Slide 14 outlines several key indicators. The most obvious one is sustained profitable growth. You should be seeing your customer base expand consistently, but not just any customers.
You're looking for those ideal customers, the ones who are a perfect fit for your product and who are likely to stick around for the long haul, right?
Exactly. And that's where retention comes in. You want to see low churn rates, meaning that your customers are sticking around and continuing to use your product. The PMF Primer even provides some benchmarks for different types of businesses. For example, for enterprise SaaS companies, a churn rate below 3% is considered excellent.
So you're not just looking for a flash in the pan. You're looking for sustainable, long-term growth fueled by happy, engaged customers. And usage is another key metric, right? You want to see that your customers are actively using your product, not just letting their subscriptions gather dust.
Absolutely. High usage indicates that your product is providing real value and that it's integrated into your customers' workflows. The presentation suggests that for a B2C product, you should aim for at least 50% of paying users engaging in a desirable daily action.
So it's not enough to just acquire users. You need to acquire the right users and ensure they're getting real value from your product. What about sustainable unit economics? How does that factor into achieving MMF?
It's essential. As we discussed, unit economics are about ensuring that the cost of acquiring and serving a customer is significantly less than the lifetime value of that customer. The PMF Primer reiterates the 3.1 LTV.SAW to CAC ratio as a general rule of thumb, but remember, this is just a starting point. The ideal ratio will vary depending on your industry, your business model, and your growth stage.
This is all so helpful in understanding how the pieces of PMF fit together. But I have to say, this whole topic can feel pretty overwhelming. There are so many different metrics, frameworks, and opinions out there. Is there a way to simplify this whole concept, to distill it down to its essence?
You're in luck. Slide 15 presents a concise and insightful definition of PMF from Satij Pai. He describes PMF as scalable GTM, enabling predictable, repeatable, unit-positive customer acquisition with high retention.
Okay, let's break that down. Scalable GTM refers to having a go-to-market strategy that can handle significant growth without breaking down. Predictable, repeatable, unit-positive customer acquisition means having a system in place that consistently acquires profitable customers. And high retention speaks for itself, keeping those customers engaged and coming back for more.
You nailed it. That definition beautifully encapsulates the core elements of PMF. It's about building a system, a machine, that consistently generates desirable outcomes.
And speaking of machines, the presentation offers a fantastic analogy on slide 16. It compares achieving PMF to having a well. Can you walk us through that visualization?
Imagine a well. Every time you lower a bucket and draw it up, you get water reliably and consistently. This represents your predictable and repeatable revenue generation. The fact that you can do this many times indicates a large market, and the effort required to draw the water is less than the value of the water itself, representing unit-positive economics.
It's such a clear and memorable way to visualize PMF. It's not about random splashes of water. It's about having a reliable source that you can consistently draw from. It's about creating a system that works, even when you're not there to manually operate it.
Exactly. And that system is what allows you to scale your business sustainably. You know that for every unit of effort you put in, you're going to get a predictable return.
Now, before we get too deep into the mechanics of achieving PMF, the PMF primer stresses the importance of making a careful pick early on. Slides 17 through 21 dive into this concept. Can you explain what this pick is all about and why it's so crucial?
The pick refers to those fundamental choices founders have to make at the very beginning of their journey. It could be choosing to start a company in the first place, deciding which company to focus on if you have multiple ideas, or perhaps most importantly, selecting the right problem to solve.
And slide 18 highlights just how crucial this decision is, stating that most founders spend 5% of their time on something that determines 50% of their success. That's incredible leverage. So how do founders typically arrive at this crucial pick?
Slide 19 outlines three common paths: personal pain or experience, prospecting for problems, or pivoting towards something that gains traction. Each has its pros and cons, and the PMF primer cautions that prospecting can be the riskiest approach if not done carefully.
Can you explain why prospecting for problems might be riskier than the other two approaches?
Prospecting for problems often involves identifying a market opportunity without a deep personal connection to the problem itself. While this can lead to discovering untapped markets, it also carries the risk of building a solution for a problem that people don't actually care enough about to pay for.
So it's about finding that balance between identifying a market opportunity and ensuring that you're solving a problem that people are truly passionate about. And how do these different picks influence the two phases of problem discovery and problem validation, as shown in the table on slide 20?
It's fascinating to see how the time commitment and focus shift depending on the founder's pick. For example, if the problem stems from personal experience, the problem discovery phase might be much shorter because the founder already has a deep understanding of the issue. They've lived it, they've felt the pain, and they're intimately familiar with the nuances of the problem.
So they can move more quickly into the problem validation phase, where they're testing their proposed solution with real users and gathering feedback. Conversely, if the pick comes from prospecting, the founder will need to spend more time understanding the problem before even thinking about building a solution.
Exactly. They'll need to conduct thorough market research, talk to potential customers, and really immerse themselves in the problem space before they can confidently say, yes, this is a problem we're solving, and here's how I'm going to solve it.
So choosing the right problem is paramount. And slide 21 emphasizes picking a problem, not a solution, and ideally one with slant. Can you elaborate on what that means and why it's so important?
Choosing a problem over a solution ensures you're addressing a genuine market need, not just building something cool because you have the technical skills to do it. The slant adds another layer of strategic thinking. It refers to finding problems with built-in tailwinds.
Tailwinds, like those factors that make your journey easier and faster.
Exactly. These could include a large and growing market, a regulatory environment that favors your solution, or even just emerging trends that are aligned with your product. Think of it like this. You could be the best sailor in the world, but if you're sailing against the wind, you're going to have a much tougher time reaching your destination.
So it's not just about solving a problem. It's about solving a problem that has the potential to become a big business, a problem where the market forces are working in your favor.
Precisely. And the PMF primer provides a great example of this with Vanta versus Flyrobe. Vanta helps companies automate security compliance, a problem with inherent slant due to increasing regulations and cybersecurity concerns. Flyrobe, on the other hand, is a fashion rental platform, a problem without the same level of slant because it's not addressing a critical pain point for a large enough market.
So Vanta, by choosing a problem with slant, has positioned itself for faster growth and greater success. What other insights does the presentation offer about this crucial early stage of the PMF journey?
Slide 21 cautions against mistaking early traction for product market fit. Just because a few people are excited about your product doesn't mean you've cracked the code.
So it's about looking beyond the initial hype and focusing on those deeper signals of genuine problem-solution fit, like high engagement, low churn, and positive word of mouth.
Exactly. It's about validating your assumptions with real data and ensuring that your initial excitement is rooted in a solid foundation of market need and customer love.
This pick concept is so powerful. It reminds us that the foundation of PMF lies in choosing the right problem to solve. So we've got our pick figured out. We've got a good understanding of the two phases of the PMF journey, PPF and MMF. But are there any additional thoughts on PMF that we should keep in mind as we continue our exploration?
Slides 22 through 24 offer some crucial insights. First, it's much harder to change the product to fit the market than the other way around. This goes back to the importance of that initial pick.
Mhm.
If you've chosen the wrong problem, or if the market landscape shifts dramatically, trying to force your product to fit a market that doesn't exist or that no longer cares is an uphill battle.
So it's better to pivot and adjust course early on rather than clinging to a solution that's not resonating.
Absolutely. The presentation also emphasizes that PMF is not a one-and-done thing. You can lose it. Markets change, competitors emerge, customer needs evolve.
That's a sobering thought. So even if you achieve a strong product market fit initially, you need to stay vigilant, keep iterating, and constantly be listening to your customers to ensure you're still meeting their needs.
Exactly. And that leads to another key takeaway. Achieving PMF is a grind. Slide 23 quotes Amrish Rao, who says, occasional examples of lighting in a bottle, examples like Twitter aside, most PMF achievements are a steady, slow grind.
So no overnight successes here. It's about constantly experimenting, learning, adapting, and refining your approach until you find that sweet spot where your product truly resonates with the market. It's like running a marathon, not a sprint.
That's a great analogy. And the founder's role in this marathon is constantly evolving. Slide 24 highlights how the founder's focus shifts as the business grows and matures.
Can you elaborate on how the founder's role changes throughout the different stages of achieving PMF?
During the PPF phase, the founder is heavily involved in product development, gathering user feedback, and iterating on the product. They're essentially wearing the hat of a product manager, obsessing over every detail of the user experience and ensuring that the product is solving the right problem in the right way. But as the business moves into the MMF phase, the founder's focus shifts towards customer acquisition, refining the go-to-market strategy, and building a scalable and repeatable sales process.
So they transition from being the chief product officer to the chief customer officer, in a sense.
Exactly. And this adaptability is crucial for a founder's success. They need to be able to wear multiple hats, shift their focus as needed, and constantly learn and adapt as the business evolves.
Right. That brings us to the next chapter of our deep dive, understanding go-to-market, or GTM, as it's referred to in slides 26 through 29. Before we move on, though, I want to pause for a moment and ask you, dear listener, a question.
I love it when you bring the listener into the conversation. What's on your mind?
We've talked a lot about the theoretical side of PMF, but I'm curious to know how these concepts resonate with you on a personal level. Given your interest in startups, what aspects of this discussion have stood out to you so far? What are you finding most helpful or most challenging as you think about your own projects?
That's a great question to ponder as we head into the next part of our deep dive. We'll be back in just a moment to explore the intricacies of go-to-market strategy. Welcome back to our deep dive into product market fit. Before we paused, you asked our listener a great question. How do these PMF concepts resonate with them personally, given their interest in startups?
I'm always curious to know what's clicking for our listeners, what's making them think differently about their own projects. But for now, let's shift gears and dive into the world of go-to-market strategy. Slides 26 through 29 of this PMF primer presentation really break down how GTM plays a crucial role in achieving that elusive product market fit.
It's true. You can have the most amazing product in the world, but if you can't get it in front of the right people, it's all for nothing. And that's where GTM comes in. It's about creating a bridge between your product and your target market.
And that bridge needs to be sturdy enough to handle the weight of growth, right? Especially as you start scaling your business.
Absolutely. But before you even think about scaling, you need to make sure you're targeting the right market with the right message. The PMF primer emphasizes the importance of understanding the nuances of B2B versus B2C when crafting your GTM strategy.
Can you give us an example of how GTM might differ depending on whether you're selling to businesses or consumers?
Let's say you're a B2C company selling a new fitness app. Your target audience might be young adults who are active on social media and interested in trying the latest fitness trends. Your messaging might focus on the app's gamified features, its social sharing capabilities, and its ability to help users achieve their fitness goals in a fun and engaging way.
So you'd probably leverage channels like Instagram, TikTok, and influencer marketing to reach that audience, right?
Exactly. But now imagine you're a B2B company selling enterprise software to large corporations. Your target audience might be CIOs or IT managers who are responsible for making purchasing decisions for their organizations.
Your messaging would probably be much more data-driven, focusing on things like cost savings, efficiency gains, and security features, right?
You got it. And instead of social media, you might rely on channels like industry conferences, webinars, and white papers to reach those decision makers.
Slides 27 and 28 of the presentation provide some really helpful examples of this, even breaking down specific channels and messaging tactics for both B2B and B2C. What stands out to you for those examples?
What's interesting is how the PMF primer emphasizes that the best GTM strategies are often a blend of inbound and outbound tactics.
Can you remind us what the difference is between inbound and outbound marketing?
Inbound marketing is about attracting customers to you through valuable content and experiences. Think blog posts, SEO, social media engagement, webinars, and things like that. Outbound marketing is more about proactively reaching out to potential customers.
So things like cold calling, email blasts, and paid advertising campaigns.
Exactly. And while most successful companies use a mix of both, they typically have a dominant approach. Slide 29 provides some great examples of this. Salesforce, a B2B giant, relies heavily on events and conferences as part of their outbound strategy, while Canva, a B2C design platform, has seen massive success with organic or inbound growth through social media and word of mouth.
It makes you realize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to GPM. It's about finding the right mix for your specific business and target market. But no matter what channels you choose, one thing remains constant: the importance of crafting a compelling message that resonates with your target audience.
The PMF primer highlights this beautifully with a quote from Simon Sinek who says, "People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it."
That's so true. It's not enough to just list your product's features and benefits. You need to connect with your audience on an emotional level to tap into their aspirations, their pain points, their values.
And that's where storytelling becomes so powerful. By sharing your brand story, your mission, your values, you can create a deeper connection with your audience and make them feel like they're a part of something bigger than just a transaction.
The PMF Primer encourages founders to think of their GTM strategy as an ongoing experiment. It's about constantly testing and learning, tweaking your message, experimenting with different channels, and refining your understanding of your ideal customer. It reminds us that there's no magic formula. It's just a lot of trial and error, data analysis, and relentless iteration.
Speaking of iteration, do you remember that drunken walk graph we discussed earlier? It illustrates how the journey to PMF is rarely linear. There are going to be setbacks, pivots, and course corrections along the way, and that's okay.
It's all part of the process. And this is where having a strong GTM strategy can really make a difference. It provides a framework for navigating those inevitable challenges, for adapting to changing market conditions, and for continuously refining your approach to reach your target customers.
It's like having a compass that guides you through the wilderness of building a successful business. It helps you stay focused on your destination even when the path gets a little bumpy.
Okay, we've got a solid grasp on the GTM side of things. But I'm curious, how do we apply this knowledge to specific industries or business models? Are there any examples in the PMF primer that illustrate how PMF manifests differently in different contexts?
Slide 11 actually digs into this, offering insights into how signs of product-to-problem fit, that first step towards PMF, can vary between B2B and B2C companies.
Right, because achieving PPF for, say, a fintech startup targeting financial institutions is going to look a lot different than achieving PPF for a mobile gaming company targeting teenagers.
Exactly. For a B2C company like that mobile gaming company, high engagement and strong word-of-mouth referrals are key indicators of PPF. Are people spending hours playing the game, telling their friends about it, leaving positive reviews in the App Store?
Those are all good signs that you're onto something, that you've tapped into a need or desire that people are willing to spend their time and money on.
Precisely. But for a B2B company like that fintech startup, speed through the sales funnel often becomes a more important metric. If banks and financial institutions are moving quickly from initial contact to signing a contract, that suggests your product is solving a pressing problem and delivering clear value.
And the presentation even provides some concrete timeframes that can signal strong PPF in a B2B context. For small and medium businesses, or SMBs, a sales cycle of 30 to 45 days is a good sign.
For mid-market companies, that time frame extends to 2 to 3 months. And for large enterprises, you might be looking at 6 to 9 months or even longer. The bigger the organization, the more complex the decision-making process, and the longer the sales cycle tends to be.
This highlights how crucial it is to tailor your GTM strategy and your expectations to the specific dynamics of your target market.
Absolutely. What works for a fast-moving startup selling to small businesses might not be effective for a company targeting Fortune 500 companies. And that applies not just to the sales cycle, but also to your messaging, your pricing model, your customer support processes, even the features you prioritize in your product roadmap.
It's about understanding the unique needs, challenges, and motivations of your target audience and creating a GTM strategy that aligns with those specific dynamics. Okay, we've talked a lot about the tactical side of GTM, but I want to zoom out for a moment and ask you a broader question. What are some of the biggest mistakes you see founders making when it comes to their GTM strategy?
One of the most common mistakes is not clearly defining their target market. They try to be everything to everyone, which ends up diluting their message and making it harder to connect with any specific audience.
It's like trying to hit a moving target with a shotgun instead of a rifle.
Exactly. Another mistake is underestimating the importance of building a strong brand. They think that just having a great product is enough, but in today's crowded marketplace, you need to differentiate yourself. You need to create a brand that people trust, admire, and want to be associated with.
And that brand needs to be reflected in every aspect of your GTM strategy, from your messaging and your visuals to your customer service and your overall tone of voice.
Absolutely. And the third mistake I often see is neglecting to track and analyze their GTM metrics. They're throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping something sticks, but they're not actually measuring what's working and what's not.
So they're not learning from their mistakes, they're not optimizing their approach, and they're missing out on valuable insights that could help them improve their GTM strategy.
Exactly, and that's a recipe for wasted resources and missed opportunities. The PMF primer emphasizes that achieving the right GTM fit often involves iterating on your persona, channel, and message until you hit that sweet spot where you're consistently acquiring customers in a profitable and scalable way. It's about having the data to back up your decisions and the willingness to adapt based on what you learn.
This resonates with what we discussed earlier about PMF not being a one-time event, but rather an ongoing process of iteration and adaptation. It's not about reaching a finish line. It's about running a constant, adaptable race.
That's a perfect analogy, and having a strong GTM strategy is like having the right shoes and the right training plan for that marathon. It sets you up for success and helps you navigate the inevitable challenges along the way.
So to all our listeners out there who are working on their GTM strategy, remember that it's an ongoing journey. It's about finding what works for your specific business, your target market, and your product. Don't be afraid to experiment, to track your metrics, and to be willing to pivot when necessary.
And remember, the goal of GTM is not just to acquire customers, it's to acquire the right customers, the ones who are a good fit for your product, who will get value from it, and who will stick around for the long haul.
So it's not about quantity, it's about quality. It's about finding those customers who will become your biggest fans, your brand advocates, and your partners in growth. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I want to circle back to a concept we touched on earlier, the power of the slant.
Ah, yes, the slant. That beautiful tailwind that can make your journey to PMF so much smoother and faster.
Can you remind us what that means and why it's so crucial for achieving PMF? Slide 21 of the PMF primer really digs into this concept.
The slant, as you might recall, refers to choosing a problem with inherent tailwinds factors that are working in your favor and can accelerate your path to PMF. These tailwinds can take many forms.
Like a large and rapidly growing market.
Exactly. If you're solving a problem that's only relevant to a small niche audience, your growth potential is inherently limited. But if you're addressing a pain point that's felt by a large and growing market, you have a much greater chance of achieving significant scale.
What are some other examples of tailwinds that founders should look for?
Another powerful tailwind is a regulatory environment that favors your solution. Think about the rise of fintech companies in recent years. Many of these companies have benefited from a loosening of regulations in the financial industry, which has created new opportunities for innovation and disruption.
So it's about being aware of the regulatory landscape and identifying those areas where regulations are shifting in a way that could benefit your business.
Exactly. And sometimes the tailwinds are more about timing and trends. For example, if you're building a product that leverages a new technology that's just starting to gain mainstream adoption, you have a first mover advantage. You're riding the wave of early adoption, and you have the opportunity to shape the market and define the category.
I love that image of riding the wave. It's like catching a perfect swell and letting it propel you forward.
Exactly. And the PMF Primer provides a great example of this with Vanta, a company that helps businesses automate security compliance.
Right. We touched on Vanta earlier, but I'd love to hear more about why their choice of problem has such a strong slant.
Vanta is a brilliant example of picking a problem with inherent tailwinds. Increasing regulatory pressure, growing cybersecurity concerns, and the rising complexity of data privacy laws all create a massive and expanding market for security compliance solutions.
So they're not just solving a problem that people care about, they're solving a problem that's becoming increasingly urgent and important in today's digital world.
Exactly, and that urgency creates a powerful tailwind for Vanta. They're not having to convince businesses that security compliance is important. The market is already doing that for them.
So by choosing a problem with a strong slant, Vanta has positioned itself for faster growth and greater success. It's a reminder that achieving PMF is not just about building a great product, it's about choosing the right problem to solve. A problem where the market forces are aligned in your favor.
It's about understanding the market landscape, identifying those tailwinds, and then positioning your business to ride those wins to success.
So for all you founders out there, when you're considering your next venture, remember the power of the slant. Look for problems with built-in tailwinds, problems where the market is already moving in your direction.
And as you work towards PMF, remember that it's a journey, not a destination. Stay curious, stay adaptable, and never stop learning.
This has been such an insightful deep dive into product market fit. We've covered so much ground, from the initial pick to the importance of understanding your target market to the ongoing process of iteration and adaptation. But there's still so much more to uncover.
Join us for the final part of our deep dive, where we'll explore some additional frameworks and insights that can help you navigate the ever-evolving world of PMF. See you soon.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive into product market fit. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
It really has. We've covered so much ground, from understanding the core components of PMF to exploring the nuances of go-to-market strategy and the power of choosing the right problem with the right slant.
And you've shared some incredible insights from this PMF primer presentation. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure we leave our listener with some practical tools and frameworks they can use to navigate their own PMF journey.
I'm all for giving our listeners some actionable takeaways. The PMF primer actually includes a couple of really helpful frameworks in the appendix that we haven't touched on yet, specifically the congruent square on slide 31 and the two triangulations on slide 32.
Let's unpack those. The congruent square, that name alone makes me think of some kind of magical formula. Is it as complicated as it sounds?
Not at all. It's a simple yet powerful way to visualize the key elements that need to be in alignment for business to achieve sustainable success. It essentially argues that focusing on just one aspect of your business, whether it's your product, your team, or your marketing, is not enough.
So it's about looking at the bigger picture and making sure all the pieces fit together harmoniously.
Exactly. Think of it like a four-legged stool. If one leg is wobbly or too short, the whole thing becomes unstable. The congruent square highlights four key elements that need to be in balance: your product, your team, the market you're targeting, and your go-to-market strategy.
Okay, I can see how that visual makes it much easier to grasp the interconnected nature of these different elements. Can you walk us through each of those legs of the stool and why they're so crucial for achieving PMF?
Let's start with the product itself. Obviously, you need a product that solves a real problem for your target market, a product that people love to use and are willing to pay for. But that's just the starting point. You also need a team that's capable of executing your vision, a team with the right skills, experience, and passion to bring your product to life.
And that team needs to be aligned with the overall mission and values of the company, right?
Yeah.
They need to believe in what they're building and be excited to share it with the world.
Absolutely. The third leg of the stool is the market itself. You need to deeply understand your target audience, their needs, their pain points, their aspirations, and you need to ensure that your product is a good fit for that market, that there's enough demand to support your growth ambitions.
Because even if you have an amazing product and a stellar team, if you're targeting the wrong market, or if the market is too small or too competitive, your chances of success are significantly reduced.
Exactly. And that brings us to the final leg of the stool, your go-to-market strategy. This is all about how you reach your target customers, how you communicate your value proposition, and how you convince them to choose your product over the competition.
And this goes back to what we discussed earlier about the importance of tailoring your GTM strategy to the specific dynamics of your target market, whether it's B2B or B2C, whether you're selling to small businesses or large enterprises.
Exactly. The congruence square is a great reminder that achieving PMF is not about focusing on any one element in isolation. It's about ensuring that all four legs of the stool are strong and in balance, working together to support the overall weight of your business.
Okay, so we've got our stool all set up and sturdy. Now, how do we make sure it stays that way? The two triangulations framework on slide 32 seems to offer some guidance on that front. What's the key takeaway from that framework?
The two triangulations are all about continuous iteration and refinement. They emphasize that achieving PMF is not a one-time event, it's an ongoing process of testing, learning, and adapting.
So it's like that drunken walk visualization we discussed earlier, where you're constantly making adjustments and course corrections along the way.
Exactly. The first triangle focuses on aligning your product, your GTM strategy, and your overall business model. You're essentially asking yourself, is my product the right fit for my target market? Is my GTM strategy effectively reaching those customers? And does my business model support sustainable growth and profitability?
And if the answer any of those questions is no, or even maybe not quite, then it's time to make some adjustments.
Right, exactly. And the second triangle focuses on aligning your goals, the metrics you use to track progress, and the incentives that drive behavior within your team. You're essentially asking, are we all rowing in the same direction? Are we measuring the right things? And are we rewarding the behaviors that will lead to success?
It's about creating a feedback loop where you're constantly learning from your data, from your customers, and from your team, and using those insights to refine your approach and improve your chances of achieving PMF.
Precisely. The two triangulations framework is a reminder that achieving PMF is not about finding some magic formula or silver bullet. It's about embracing a process of continuous improvement, of constantly asking questions, challenging assumptions, and iterating based on what you learn.
Okay, this has been such an enlightening deep dive into product market fit. I feel like we've gone from 0 to 60 in our understanding of this complex but crucial topic. And you've shared some incredible insights from the PMF primer presentation, from the power of the slant to the importance of aligning your product, your team, and your market.
I'm glad you found it helpful, but before we let our listener go, I want to make sure they walk away with a clear understanding of what PMF really means and why it matters so much.
What would you say are the three most important things for our listener to remember about product market fit?
First, PMF is not a destination, it's a journey. It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and refining your approach until you find that sweet spot where your product truly resonates with the market. Second, PMF is not about luck or guesswork. It's about being systematic and data-driven. It's about using frameworks like the congruent square and the two triangulations to guide your decisions and ensure you're focusing on the right things. And third, PMF is not just about building a great product, it's about building a great business. It's about understanding your target market, crafting a compelling message, and finding a scalable and repeatable way to reach those customers.
This has been a truly transformative deep dive for me, and I hope it's been the same for you, dear listener. If you're feeling inspired to explore these concepts further, the PMF Primer presentation has a fantastic list of recommended readings on slide 33. Happy reading, and keep chasing that perfect fit.